Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to This Week in Magic Online Finance. I'm your host, Chaz Andres, and as always, we're going to get started this week with the news. The biggest story, of course, is that Ravnica Allegiance Standard is finally here. We've had our first major tournament of the season, the StarCityGames.com Open in Indianapolis, and well, between those results and a week's worth of results on MTGO and Arena, this new metagame is finally starting to come into shape. Now, folks, I really did try to hold off talking about Hydroid Crisis until we got to gaining ground because, well, Hydroid Crisis gained the most ground of any card in Standard this week. But Hydroid Crisis is also the biggest story on MTGO this week, full stop. And that's because it didn't just gain a little, it gained 31 tickets. Hydroid Crisis jumped from 14 all the way up to 45 this week. That is crazy. That is the biggest gain we've seen any card make since the crash. And if you thought that, all the Standard players had abandoned MTGO in favor for Arena at this point, well, there's at least a few of us still kicking around. Now, I will warn you that I'm a little bit worried that Hydroid Crisis is a tad overrated right now. It looked kind of clunky in some of the games I watched this weekend, but that doesn't discount that fully half of the decks that made Day 2 in Indianapolis were running Hydroid Crisis. And this includes most of the most hyped up decks in the format right now. We're talking about decks like Sultai Midrange and Bant Nexus and Sultai Climb and Bant Climb, and these are decks that people really want to play, which is why Hydroid Crisis is so expensive right now. So, with Hydroid Crisis gaining 31 tickets in a week and it's showing up in all these decks that people want to play, are we talking about the next 60 or 70 ticket card on MTGO? I don't think so. And that has mostly to do with the fact that the current economic climate on MTGO is still the opposite of good. Even if Hydroid Crisis is all that, and I'm not sure that it is, but even if it is, people are really gun shy about the value of their digital cards right now. As you can see from, the modern market continuing to drop and literally everything that's happened over the past couple of months. So unless you need Hydroid Crisis for a deck that you are playing right now, my guess is that we should be fading this gain, we should be selling into the hype. In fact, I'm not sure this card will ever be higher than it's at right now, so I would sell these immediately if you can. Now, Hydroid Crisis decks weren't the only decks that did well this weekend. If we take a look at the results from SCG Indianapolis, we can see all sorts of decks performing well. Decks like Mono Red, and Esper Control, and Esper Midrange, and Is It Drakes, and even those wacky Gate decks. And the market is already starting to kind of adjust to this, but I expect those results to start to cascade into the finance market in a much bigger way over the next couple of days. I'm especially high on the Esper cards right now because that deck wasn't really a part of the Arena or MTGO metagame before this weekend, and those Esper decks looked pretty good on camera at Star City Games Indianapolis. So if you're looking for a place to stick some money right now, Esper staples would be my best bet. Let's move on now to gaining ground, where in Standard, well, we've already talked a lot about Hydroid Krasis, the biggest gainer of the week, so let's talk about a couple of the other lesser gainers, which were still pretty significant. For example, Nexus of Fate jumped 10 tickets from 16 all the way up to 26 this week. And this is a card we've actually highlighted a few times in the past. It's been gaining ground for a couple of weeks now, and that's because Bant Nexus is one of the key decks in the format right now, and all recent results seem to indicate it is one of the best things you could be playing. It did well on Arena, did well on MTGO, did well at Star City Games Indianapolis this weekend. It is a very good deck at the moment. And, well, Nexus of Fate, it's a treasure chest only card on MTGO, which means that supply is low. This card's at 26 right now, it is continuing to gain ground. I expect it to end up over 30 for sure, and it may end up even approaching 40 depending on how the overall Standard Index does over the next couple of weeks. The other Standard card I'd really like to highlight this week is Vivian Reed, which jumped about 7 tickets from 8 up to 15. Now, as you remember, if you're a weekly watcher of this series, Vivian Reed took a series of major tumbles thanks to Core Set 2019 dropping out of the set redemption window on MTGO. Unfortunately for everybody who sold their copies, Vivian Reed is still one of the best cards in Standard. And since green is one of the best colors in Standard now, thanks to Hydroid Krasis and cards like Growth Chamber Guardian, well, Vivian Reed is suddenly in a lot of demand. Much like Nexus of Fate, I don't think this one is done growing yet. This trend line is still pointing straight up, and 20 tickets, maybe even higher than that, not out of the realm of possibility here. Let's move on now to Modern, where our biggest gainer of the week was Heritage Druid, jumping about 2 tickets from 2 up to 4, roughly doubling in price, which must mean that Elves is finally tier 1 in Modern, or maybe the legacy resurgence we've all been waiting for is here. No, not quite. This is a result of a Saffron Olive video that he put out early last week, where he highlighted a really neat Modern Elves combo variant that can do all sorts of absurd things for just about 13 tickets. It's a neat budget brew. And well, I like this deck, it's fun, it's not particularly competitive of course, and these Saffron Olive spikes are usually pretty short-lived. So feel free to sell your Heritage Druids into the hype if you want. Let's move on now to our biggest loser, where in Standard it was Angel of Grace, dropping 6 tickets from 8 down to 2. And this is partially a result of Angel of Grace not really showing up in a lot of the week 1 builds, but it was also a result of Hydroid Krasis' meteoric rise, because as the Krasis went up, the rest of Ravnica Allegiance kind of came down. Of course, this means that Angel of Grace is actually kind of a neat little buy right now. 2 tickets definitely appears to be its price floor, it's really not going any lower than that, and it actually did look good on camera whenever it showed up this weekend, especially in Esper decks. So now that you no longer have to pay for this imagined upside for Angel of Grace, I'm definitely going in on a couple of copies. Let's move on to Modern, where it was another atrocious week for most of the format's most important cards. Even Surgical Extraction, which was mostly immune from these drops in price, finally took a hit this week. It dropped 10 tickets from 47 down to 37, which means there are now no Modern staples worth more than 40 tickets, and only 5 Modern staples worth more than 20 tickets right now. So what's going on here? Well, this is actually a trend that's been going on for a while, because as you all know at this point, whenever there's a new Standard set, people sell their Modern cards in order to buy in. Now, I naively thought this wouldn't happen this time around because everybody's Modern collection was already so depressed after the crash. Unfortunately, I was wrong, and as a result, you see cards like Hydroid Krasis and Vivian Reed ticking up in value, but your Modern collection continues to depreciate for at least another week. Now, the sneak of the week this week is Teleria West, which bottomed out at around the 2 ticket mark during the crash, and it's back up to about 5 tickets now and continuing to rise. Teleria West sees play in a lot of different Modern and Legacy decks. It's probably used most in Amulet Titan, but I suspect that a lot of this recent growth is due to the 4-color Prison deck that has been a little bit of a Modern darling lately. There was some thought that this Prison deck would lose a key card to a ban, maybe Mox Opal was going to be banned, maybe Ancient Stirrings, but when none of that happened, it's pretty much game on for this deck. And because Teleria West sees a lot of play beyond it, I feel like the underlying metrics for this card are good. Fortunately, I'm not sure how safe an investment it is because, well, the Modern market is still terrible on MTGO right now, but if you're going to invest in any Modern card, Teleria West seems better than most. As always, we're going to end the week by taking a look at the MTGO Trader sales data over the past 7 days. And this should give us a good idea of which cards are selling the best right now, regardless of price increases or decreases. Looking at overall sales by volume, it's all Ravnica Allegiance all the time. It's cards like Skewer the Critics and Light Up the Stage and Growth Spiral and Breeding Pool, basically the cards from Mono Red Aggro and from all of the Hydroid Krasis Simic decks. So, if you're looking at what people are interested in building right now, it's those 2 things. It's red decks that attack very quickly, and decks that draw a lot of cards with Hydroid Krasis, be it Sultai, Bant, or straight up Simic. Now, in terms of overall sales by price, well, I bet you can see where we're going here. Welcome to the fold, Hydroid Krasis, the darling of Ravnica Allegiance, joining Arclight, Phoenix, and Surgical Extraction on the top of this list, and also on the top of a very short list that people seem willing to shell out real money for on MTGO. So what other cards are going to join them on this list? Well, hopefully we'll find out soon in coming weeks. And that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Chaz Andres. I will see you next Monday morning for another episode of This Week in Magic Online Finance.